Welcome to the Skill at Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders, CEOs, investors, and executives to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is a very special one. His name is Robin Daniels, Chief Business and Product Officer at Zensai. He's also known as the Jay-Z of B2B SaaS. He has on his belt 2.5x IPOs. And I'm sure that you have already crossed it with him on LinkedIn and the amazing videos that he puts together for Zensai. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's really great to be here. I've always loved following you and your content. You put out a lot of great content that really is helping people like me think differently about things, about growth, about leadership. So I appreciate all the things that you put out there. And it's just great to be here.
We will get back to the pod in 1 minute. Let me just tell you that I'm glad to announce that this podcast is sponsored by the web agency WebTech. WebTech are specialists on getting customers to companies. They are booking 250 meetings a month to their own sales team. And their business strategy is to teach other companies what they do for themselves. I'm very excited to announce that I've agreed with Pontus, the CEO of WebTech, a special advantage to our listeners. Our community have now access to a pre-designed suggestion on how your website could be improved and/or free trials for both SEO and digital marketing. Oh, and by the way, we are working with them too, and I'm impressed by the results. You can do the same. You just need to go to trywebtech.com/Mike, trywebtech.com/Mike, and tech is without the H, just TEC, and tell them you are a listener of the show. Now, back to the pod.
Awesome. So, yeah, audience already knows us. This will be a fun conversation where we'll just go without playbook and just let it flow and try to add as much value we can to the audience through our experiences and through our journeys. We thought about touching on something that I think you and your executive team and all the layers of your organization are doing quite well, which is personal branding, right? So how do we align the company brands with the personal brands? And something that we are more used to see is doing that for CEOs and key executives on the company, but it's not very normal when this is kind of a movement that the entire company is taking over LinkedIn and acting as one team as well, not only inside the company but also for outside. So it's really inspiring to see that movement. And again, it's we all know in theory this is the way we should do, but then putting it in practice, sometimes it's where, as we know, the ideas are great, but then execution, that's what it takes to the next level. But before that, Robin, just walk us through a little bit of a quick intro about yourself for the ones we didn't have yet the pleasure to meet you. But I recommend them to go to your LinkedIn and to start following you.
Well, I'll definitely walk you through my 2.5 IPOs as well. But basically, I've been a nerd my whole life, and I was born and raised in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I fell in love with technology, honestly, at a really early age. And I love the way that technology could impact the way we work and the way we live, or both, right? I mean, it impacts everything that we do. And I fell in love with the idea that I wanted to be a part of this movement of creating technology that really had a profound impact on people's lives. And I kept reading stories about the magic of technology, both in Europe, but more importantly in Silicon Valley at the time. This was in the 90s. And I ended up teaching myself how to program. So I was like a self-taught programmer. I started creating websites using HTML and JavaScripting and cascading style sheets and all that stuff in the early 90s. And I just kind of got more and more into it. And I knew that my future was probably going to lie in technology, honestly. And so when I was 21, I ended up moving to California. I bought a one-way ticket from Copenhagen to California. I'd never been. I didn't have a job or a place to stay. I didn't know anybody. I just always had this kind of driving thought that I didn't want to look back on my life and regret having lacking the courage to not follow my heart, honestly. And that probably, if I look back on the last 25 plus years of my life, that one decision was probably the most pivotal in my whole life. So I moved over there, applied to every job I could find, and I ended up getting lots of interviews. And into those interview cycles, I got about 2 job offers with 2 startup companies in Silicon Valley. I ended up taking a job at a small company. And I remember calling back to my family because they were all sad that I was leaving. I was like, I made it. I got a job. And I got hired
Wow.
as a web programmer, web developer. And a month after I got there, the whole market crashed. So I came in February 2000, and a month later, in March of 2000, the whole market crashed. And I was like, holy shit, this is rough. So this company did not end up making it. Then I had to hustle my way and kind of find another job. And I did. And then 4 months later, that company also had layoffs, and that company did not make it. So the first year was, honestly, Mike, it was pretty rough. But I was young, and so it's like you just kind of roll where you can do the best you can. But the first year was rough. And if you just look at that one year, honestly, if you zoom into any part of somebody's life, you'll make a value judgment of, are you successful or not? And if you just zoom in on that first year, it would look like I was an abject failure. But then when you zoom out over the last 20 years, I ended up having more successes than failures, luckily, in my career. Ended up having a decent run at some good tech companies. And my career was growing steadily, starting really, I would say, in 2001. But it really took off when I joined Salesforce in the fairly early days. And in 2007, I ended up taking responsibility for one of their products lines and just kind of grew that to be really successful. And that created enough of a brand and momentum around me that companies started finding me. Beforehand, I had to go hustle my way and kind of apply to as many jobs as I could find and so on. But I worked my ass off, and I created a lot of momentum, and I ended up creating a good reputation around myself as somebody who's decent to work with and a nice guy, but also really delivers great results. And so I went to Box afterwards, about 200 people, about 20 million in ARR, but they were doubling in size, every year. So going through kind of a classic hyper growth scenario.
Right.
And then we ended up going public a few years later. I wasn't the CMO there, but I reported into the CMO. I was the head of enterprise marketing. And then I thought, so Salesforce had gotten quite big when I left, close to 10,000 people. I wanted to go smaller suddenly because I felt like I'd gotten a little impersonal. Then I went small to Box, and I went even smaller to a company called Vera that was like 8 people when I joined. I was the first business hire there.
Wow.
Went through scaling that out. We were in stealth mode, so we had to launch it from nothing with virtually no budget. We ended up raising funding, and we ended up getting acquired a few years later. And then I was at LinkedIn for a little while, which I actually thought I was going to be there for a long time because it's a platform I love. It's changed my life, as we can get into later. But then WeWork reached out to me, and I ended up meeting the CEO of WeWork, and I just thought he was crazy, but I loved the vision of what he was building, and I ended up participating in that. Not for long, only about a year or so, and then the whole thing came crashing down. That's my 0.5 IPO right there, because this is something I don't even know how to even describe it. That's why I haven't really posted about it, but I was at NASDAQ with the executive team and my team planning our IPO, figuring out party, how we're going to do it, who we're going to invite, all that, and then the whole thing came crashing down. So that's why I'm like, it's not just we were close. We were very damn close to getting this IPO going, right? And then the whole thing came crashing down.
2.8x.
2.8, yeah, exactly.
You need to upgrade your
yeah, exactly. And then I went to Matterport afterwards, this company that I've been introduced to, and we took the company public in 2021. I was the chief marketing officer there. So that was fun. That was my second time doing it. But this time I was actually at NASDAQ pressing the button and so on. So that was fun. And then I ended up being really kind of an advisor for the last, let's say, year and a half, 2 years to companies all around the world. And it was super fun, but I ended up missing, honestly, being part of a team, missing having a team, missing building something meaningful together. I mean, being an advisor or a fractional kind of CMO growth leader, it's fun. You get to meet great people, but it's also a little lonely. I felt, for me, for the kind of personality that I am, and I just missed the team aspect of it. And so when I met our CEO, Rasmus, we just kind of hit it off, and he wanted to build something special. He's a new CEO to this company, and we just kind of bonded over the vision of the company, but also the idea of being really ambitious and bold, but also having fun in the journey. We're both older. We're not like in our early 20s where it's just kind of like work all the time. We want to have fun building, and we've worked at great cultures. We've also, both of us, worked in some pretty toxic cultures, and we like, let's create a company we're proud to work for, where we're having fun and supporting each other. Doesn't mean, this is not, just to be clear, not the same as always being easy. There's a lot of days that things go wrong and shit doesn't happen and so on. But as long as we're having fun and supporting each other and getting there, that's the kind of legacy that we want to leave behind, and hopefully that's what we're doing. So yeah, now it's Zensai, and it's been super fun. You know, we're growing steadily, actually better than steadily, I would say. I think we have really great growth compared to the rest of the market, about 50%. And we're just trying to build a company that really makes a difference in the world, that gets people to be the best version of themselves as much as they can be.
That's really inspiring. And full disclosure to the audience, I've been part of the journey as an advisor in 22 and 23. So yeah, it's incredible. So I know what is going on, not in the last year, but before. I know very well what is going inside, and I keep following all the
Well, let me
leaders.
pay the compliment back. Let me pay the compliment back to you. I would say your legacy lives on. I mean, you're very well regarded in the company. A lot of stuff that you worked on with the team still lives on, and the vision that we set in motion still has a lot of legs, you know, in terms of like the way we think about strategic initiatives and our OKRs and our goals and so on. Like, because as you and I know, everything starts with clarity. It's very hard to build a great company unless you have clarity of what you're trying to build for. And I think what you really help crystallize for the team is getting to that clarity of what it is that we're trying to do. Then everything else ladders up towards that. But if you don't have that to begin with, it's very, very hard to build anything great.
You made my day. Okay, so my art is full now, so not sure what to ask next. Thank you for for breaking me during the podcast. That's really great. Thank you so much. And yeah, we both know that growth is becoming more expensive, so we need to be more resourceful than ever. We need to have that drive that goes beyond the metrics, and the metrics need to be the consequence of our action and of our vision, right? So and nowadays we are all talking about go-to-market and the importance. I think we are in the advent of go-to-market, in the importance of aligning products, sales, marketing, customer success. How do we cut through the noise in the current environment? So, and what have you been doing with Zensai to cut through the noise and be able to keep feeding a company that is growing over 50% in the current market, where the rest of the companies might be much more focused on getting profitable and trying to grow as much as possible, but 50% might be a dream for a lot of those companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still do some, much less, but I still do some advisory work, and it's tough out there. There's no doubt. So I don't take our position for granted, but it's not just by luck either that we're seeing what we're seeing. Right. I mean, of course, everything starts with having a good product market fit, I would say. But from there, the way you grow, I mean, if you think about the way that you ultimately get customers, I think you have three options in terms of getting their attention. You can either pay for their attention, and that's kind of the classic digital marketing play, where you can blast the world with Google, Facebook, LinkedIn ads, and so on, or choose the channels that you might care about. And it works, but it's a very hard thing to get it right all the time. And you can spend a lot of money trying to get those leads to convert. And there, the game is honestly a game of optimization. You're trying to optimize the message, be very nimble and agile to optimize the message you're getting from the people at the right time with the right message is really what you're trying to do at the lowest cost possible, of course, right? So you can get some really good business that way, but you oftentimes have to spend a lot of money to do so because it's a lot of hit or miss. And the reality is, yes, you can get a lot of good business that way, but more often than not, you also get a lot of junk that way. To be clear, so that means you have to spend a really lot of money to get a decent funnel just from that channel alone. The benefit of that channel, though, is it works super fast, and it's probably the most data driven of all the channels that we have to get customers. Meaning, if you tell a sales leader, or marketing leader, hey, we need to get 100 leads by the end of next week. The only way you can do that is basically by going and paying for those leads. And whether or not they're going to be good leads or not, I don't really know. It's a little hard
Right.
of course, but that's a game of optimization. If you have a good message, strong ICP, good channel mix, and so on, you can probably have a decent, but it works fast and it's data driven. That's number one, digital. Number two is you can put out stories that are so interesting that people raise their hand themselves and say, hey, this is pretty interesting. I want to come and look at this more. I want to go to the website. I want to go talk to this executive, or I want to go listen to this webinar, download this white paper, or listen to this podcast, whatever it is. This one takes a little bit longer to work. It's not as data driven, but the quality of that inbound traffic is so much higher because people, of course, themselves have chosen to show interest in coming to you. And so the trick about this one here, the second category, I would classify it as organic marketing or storytelling marketing. It's about being bold and courageous because I think we're in the golden age of storytelling. I really do. Think about us now doing a podcast together. You can do a podcast. You can do TikTok videos. You can go on LinkedIn. You can do a video if you want. You can get, do some documentary. There's so many great ways to tell the story of who you are, what you stand for, what you do, and so on. So that's great. The downside of being in this golden age of storytelling is that there's so much noise out there. There really is. So if you don't have a message or a point of view that's bold enough, if you're too bland or not courageous or not interesting, if you're not eliciting honesty and emotion somehow, you're never going to break through. There's so much noise out there, Mark. Think about every day I go on LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram or read the news. My God, there's a lot of messages out there. So to break through, you really have to think about the message, what you want to stand for. So that requires courage because most people, they don't like to shake the waves, and you want to elicit an emotion. Ideally, you want to, of course, elicit a positive emotion, an optimistic emotion, but even a negative emotion is better than no emotion, right? Because at least you're creating a response somehow. And that can also lead to action, of course. I've always had the mindset that I've told all my teams that have worked for me, like we only put out positive and aspiring, inspirational messages. I'm not an idiot. I know that fear-based messaging can work really well, and lots of companies do that, but it's not really my style because I believe there's enough fear in the world, but it does work. So the second category is really around organic storytelling. Doesn't work as fast, not as data driven, but my God, the quality is so much better if you can nail it right. But it requires courage, and it requires courage all the way from the CEO to stand by those messages all the way down through the company. And we'll get to like some of the personal storytelling because I think it ties very well into this category. And then the third category, the final category of how you can basically get customers is what I would classify as community-based marketing, where you show up in the community, but that's existing customers or maybe new prospects, new customers, and you evangelize to them face to face. That could be an event. It could be a dinner. It could be lunch. It could be you going one-on-one and meeting with someone, right? At this point, you're doing non-scalable things. But you can, I bet, you're a very compelling guy and our CEO is very compelling. If you get 10 minutes with somebody, you can create a connection with someone. And that's like so valuable. But you're doing non-scalable things because you can't just, this doesn't scale. You can't just go out and talk to anybody every time.
Right.
But the loyalty you get from community-based marketing, word of mouth marketing, the companies I've worked for, LinkedIn, Salesforce, Box, the best leads, we always got the best customers who were spent the most with us, stayed the longest, were always the ones we got through the community, meaning word of mouth, or we got the chance to stand in front of them for 20 minutes or go do a 1 hour session with them in their company and so on. So, but you're doing non-scalable. So this channel here, the most valuable, but it also takes the longest because it's not scalable and it takes a long time to kind of crack the code on how are you going to get in front of all these people, right? But think about it, like digital, like the extreme opposite. You've got 2 seconds with maybe 5 to 10 words to try to convince somebody to click on, right? And so it's very hard to convey anything of meaning in that way. And then you've got the other place, community-based marketing, where you can get in front of somebody, evangelize what you do, who you are, what you stand for, want to be part of our category, want to be part of our movement, so bad what you're doing. So a good strategy today really includes all three because they work at different timelines and they require different levels of effort and investment as well. And so when I see companies just do one, they're missing a trick on the other ones because it's not either or. It's not to say that digital is bad, to be clear. It's just it's very difficult to nail that channel. It's very difficult to nail all of them. But coming back to then, if I think about the golden age we're in, storytelling, this is probably the one that excites me the most because this is where personal branding also kind of comes in.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, people buy from people. And this is the ultimate chance for you to showcase the culture and the values that your company stands for. You can showcase again whatever channel you want. We choose LinkedIn because we feel like that's the most professional, but also the one where we have, I think, our buyers are. But you could do TikTok or LinkedIn or sorry, Instagram or Facebook, whatever works for you. But this is where you can really showcase the values and the humanity behind who you are. Because at the end of the day, yes, of course, people want to buy a product that gives them value and solves some problems or challenges that they might have, but they also want to buy from people. And so the more they can see that, we see it now in the amount of inbound we get in terms of our people who want to come work with us, but also people who want to do business with us is increasing because we're coming across as a business that's delightful to work with. And we're not like forcing this. We're not trying to be quirky or different. It's just like, let's just show ourselves as we are. So if you think about who has more followers, Microsoft or Bill Gates? Bill Gates has more followers. Who has more followers, Elon Musk or Twitter?
Interesting.
Right? Elon Musk does. Who has more followers, Tim Cook or Apple? Tim Cook has more followers, right? So people buy from people at the end of the day. And ultimately, we want to be known as the company that's both very human, but also fighting on the side of humans. And I would lean into this channel. And we can talk much more in detail if you want about how to utilize this channel better. But this is where personal branding and company branding is very hard to separate the two at the end of the day.
Interesting analysis of the different categories we have in order to generate a healthy pipeline and the pros and cons of each of the categories. Cool. And before moving to personal branding, which I think you will associate more with organic storytelling, marketing, right? That will be in that bucket according to your words. Something that we saw for the last, let's say, 5-10 years when really VC exploded and B2B SaaS exploded is some brands having the courage of investing in category building, but the majority were just followers. So we're playing and trying to stand out in an existing category. Yeah. So you guys took the courage to stand up and say, we are all about human success. We will create this category because this is who we are, this is what we believe in, and this is what guides us to any decision we make. Can you tell us more about it? And again, I think it's very related to what you said on we need to have the CEO needs to understand this, needs to back this, even the board, everyone across the company needs to believe that this is the right way to go. Because if we are just looking to the data in the short term, this will not work. But in the mid-long term, this might be the bet with the best ROI, et cetera, et cetera.
Again, I think it's one of those decisions that requires a lot of courage, honestly, Mike, because if you're a small company, let's classify it as a challenger brand, you basically have two options. You can either try to fit into an existing category, and then you have to constantly prove to the leaders in that category why you're better. That's super tough because oftentimes it becomes either it could be a war on price or maybe some feature war or something like that. It becomes very tough, right? Or you can try to create your new category, which is also tough, right? Because now, but if you can become the dominant player in a category, then other companies might get compared against you. And so instead of us going in, which happens a lot now in the category, I think we've been in classically around learning, we get compared to some of the other leaders who are out there who are much bigger than us, right? And it's like, oh, do you have this feature that they have? Do you do this here? And like, okay, so now we're playing catch up. We're on the defensive all the time, trying to prove why we're better. It's tough. When you go out and do category creation, that's also tough because it's a long-term thing. You have to change the minds of how something is. I mean, you can do that. So I always think you win a category by having the best product, the best business model, or the best community. And the best companies of all really do all three. They figured out all three because each of those are a competitive moat in some way, right, over time. but you could probably start with one of them and then maybe grow over time. So let me give you an example from my past. So I used to work at
Sorry
Salesforce.
to interrupt
Yeah,
that. You said best product, best community, and what was the third?
best business model. Yeah,
Business model.
yeah,
Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. You were
No,
telling a
no, no,
story.
no, no, no. But it's important to clarify. So when I was working at Salesforce, for example, we were competing against some pretty big heavyweights out there. Oracle, SAP, Siebel, even Microsoft, right? Companies with way bigger brands and much bigger budgets than we had. And we knew that if we got into a feature war with them, honestly, they would win most of the time because they have way more features, even though they're probably not used 90% of the time, they have more features on paper, right? So if you go through an RFP, it's like, shit, they have more features than we do. It'd be very tough. So we had to change the conversation. So we really went out, of course, and it was very tied to our business model, but also our delivery model. This idea of being a SaaS, software as a service. Now we all take it for granted, but they were really kind of one of the pioneers of this here. It was called even on-demand computing back in the before it was called software as a service. But we went out with the story of we're a completely different company to do business with. The old model, again, now we take it for granted, but the old model back then we said, if you buy from Oracle or SAP, you're gonna have to pay all this money. And a lot of times once they've sold you the deal, they're much less interested in your success. And this is just the truth of it. So a lot of times what you buy, you must spend $500,000, $1 million, maybe 5 million or something, it'll sit on the shelf somewhere. And it won't really help you in making it run and so on, unless you pay extra for that, of course. Right. So they're constantly trying to sell you more because that's how they make revenue. So we're a completely different business to work with. We only win if you're successful because our model is completely different. Our business model is different. You only pay for what you use. If you only want to have one seat, you can get one seat. If you want to have 5 seats, you get 5. If you want to scale up, you can do so instantly. If you want to scale down, you can do so as well. But we only win if you're happy and successful. We're in this together. We're a different company to do business with. So your success is our success. So it's tied at the hip. It's not like we're going to just let you have the service and then just run with it without our help because we really want you to succeed. And it instantly changed the conversation of being, wow, this is different. So you're saying that we only pay for what we use? I'm like, yeah, you only do. And so if you're not using it, of course, then we don't win because you're going to come back and say, we don't need 10 seats. We only need 3. And so it became just a different conversation. We changed the battlefield of where we were competing, right? So if you can't win in one battlefield, you go out and you figure out how to change it. And and of course, it's very hard to change the battlefield when there's already an established field of play. And it's not like when I look back and I think this become a case study at Salesforce of how to do it, but it took us a long time to get there. Again, in the community, this is not something you can convince somebody in a Google ad that this is a better model. You have to go really convince people because it requires some explanation and talk to somebody. But we really invested in community. I remember in 2007, I would travel around and we did what was called a customer success tour. I would travel around to these very small cities in Kansas and in Arkansas and in Florida, where maybe 30 or 50 people would show up to a little seminar we were doing, right? And talk about the future of customer relationship management. I was like, it's a pretty drab location, but we did whatever we could to get in front and tell our side of the story because that was so important. And over time, of course, that built a very, very successful company. So my point is, with the company I'm at now, Zensai, right? So the reason we've decided on really focus on, can we change the category? So we have products, of course, individual products that fit into some categories. I think we have a classic learning management system product, and we'll compete on features, of course, against other companies. We have a very strong play because our secret sauce is we're 100% focused on Microsoft. Nobody else can say that. And so that is our superpower. But when it comes to feature by feature, sometimes they have features we don't, and sometimes we have features they don't. So then it becomes more of a war. So for us, it's about how do we then change the conversation to show that we're not just a learning management system, but we're something much bigger. So we came up with this concept of human success. And it's really tied into all the data that you see in the market all the time about how disengaged people are, how unhappy they are, how not motivated to do great work. I just saw something from Gallup 2 weeks ago that said 70% of people are disengaged at work. And I'm like, it's gone up, Mike. It's gone up. It's not going down. So it's like, wow, we have a lot of work to do. If you think that these people who are so disengaged at work are doing the best work of their life, you're deeply mistaken. All the data proves that wrong. And you think about what is a company, what is an organization? An organization is a group of people trying to solve challenges. That's all it is. Sometimes those challenges are small, and sometimes those are really big existential challenges. Oh, we got to grow, or we got to cut back, or we got to enter new markets, and so on. But an organization is a group of people trying to solve challenges. And so what we want to stand for is we want to be the company that unlocks the full potential and happiness of those people. Because it's so obvious when you see these studies say, oh, happier people do better work. Yeah, of course. And you didn't need to tell me that. It's a no-brainer. But how do you get there? I think, and most CEOs honestly would, of course, say, if you ask them, what do they say their most important asset is? Our people. Our people. We care about our people, right? And then they go right back to chasing profit and growth and all those things. And so what we want to stand for is say, okay, of course, those are great and important things. You can't have a successful business if you're not profitable or growing and so on. But those are outcomes of you creating an environment where people are showing up every single day doing the best work of their life. So we want the Zensai human success platform to be the platform that unlocks the knowledge that you need to have to do your job, the motivation that you need at a day-to-day level, either individually or with your team or with your company, and gives you the goals and the clarity of what you need to perform against and how you're going to achieve that. We want to be that platform that unlocks that. And that hopefully will create that momentum for companies. And we see that again in the data, that companies who have figured this out, how to unlock this potential, are more profitable. They see better ideas and better innovation come out of them. But it's a crime, I think, honestly, that more companies are not leaning into this, because no wonder if we're going to, and if I take a macro view on the world as well, we've got issues that affect individuals, teams, work. Then you also got things that affect society or even global issues. If you want people to solve these issues, and again, companies are here in the world to solve a lot of these issues that we have, God, we really got to figure out, Mike, how to unlock the full innovation and potential of these people. You know how it is. I'm sure you've been in times in your life where you've been in the zone and ideas are flowing and the energy is high.
Yeah.
And there's been other times where you're like, God, it's a grind. I bet those times when things are a grind and it's tough, you're not doing the best work of your life, you know?
Absolutely. What you said, when you are a fear-based mindset or burnout instead of in a abundance mindset, really enjoying, really having fun, really not seeing the time goes by, really feeling part that you belong to a high-performing team. There is a quote that I love is, the best teams are the ones that make you feel small, and they make you, it's kind of, you feel small around them, and they make you feel a giant around them. So, which is kind of, wow, these guys, well, and these girls, they are really passionate. They know what they are talking about. And at the same time, oh, they make me feel the same, right? So, and we are engaged, and we are on this together. We have a common vision. We have a common purpose. We have
100%. This is exactly what I felt when I joined Salesforce. I was like, oh my God, I was just think of it as I was working with the Navy SEALs of the industry, the best of the best.
Right.
And I felt small, but also like a giant, because they made me better every day. And we supported each other and we challenged each other in the best possible way. And we created something that was really magical. But it was really that, you said it so well, it's like you feel small and big at the same time, because you're big collectively, but you're small on your own, right? Because you feel that, wow, look at these giants that are around. It was such an honor and a privilege for me to work with these people every day. It was like, I get to work with these people. Are you kidding me? These are the best of the best, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is no price that pays that. And something that I would like to, just to close this segment of the show on category creation, is this all aligned with what we have seen in public, which is the evolution of a brand that won a Red Dot Design Award, LMS 365, which was learning management system, and Office 365, which is the kind of the differentiation they're talking about.
That's right.
To expand to Zensai, which is, we are not just a learning management system on Microsoft. We are a human success platform. So it's really amazing. So if you have been following the story after Robin just explained it, how he thinks about category building and or playing in existing category, how you completely changed the battlefield, as you said. So time is flying like crazy. Like that's how it always happens when we are having fun. So, but I really want to get to the Jay-Z of B2B software. So, and I really want to leverage your personal brand insights. As I said before in the beginning of the show, we see a lot of companies nowadays betting on the brand of the CEO.
Yeah.
Sometimes we even see some brands, and this is already not very common to play on the brand of three of the main key executives. Typically, the CPO, the CRO, the CEO, kind of around those people. Then chief people officer sometimes when you are in a moment that you want to attract a lot of talent, but usually that's it. But a brand that also bets on layer 2, layer 3 leaders, individual contributors, and even involves the board. That's one of the recent videos that I saw online, and have the board happy and really having entertaining videos. That one, yeah, I also had the opportunity to be exposed to your boards. And when I saw one of the members there on a video, and really so much fun with Rasmus, the CEO of Zensai.
Completely.
Yeah, but I don't want to keep going because I want to extract as much as possible to in favor of the audience to get some knowledge from your insights.
It's I think personal branding is so linked to the company brand. Of course, that's why we invest heavily in it. And honestly, I really think, Mike, it starts at the top. It starts with the CEO, because that by seeing the CEO do it, everyone else feels a little bit of sense of permission to do it. So that's number one. And we have a CEO, Rasmus, who's all in on this. He knows the power of this in terms of recruiting the best people in the world, getting more customers, getting more investors to come in, and so on. So he leads from the top. And then he hired me, and he can see I have an even bigger audience than him, but he's no slouch. He does a great job. He's really posting a lot of really thoughtful, great content as well. But he brings me in, and I'm like leveling up that because I've been doing it longer and I'm a little bit more prolific in that way. But now everyone else, they see him do it, they see me do it, they start getting permission. I think it really starts at the top, because or else there's always a little nervousness in people like, can I work at this company? Can I share freely and so on? And because we share very freely, good and bad, what's working and so on. I think it gives everyone this psychological permission. So number one is, I think it starts at the top. Number two is, I think it's so important to realize it's part of the job. It's not an extra thing. I can guarantee you that so many CEOs out there, they like it, but they always think this is this extra thing. It's not part of it's not serious business, right? My job is serious and I'm doing this stuff here. It's all right. And so they think it's this other thing. So they're like, I'm not, maybe once in a while they'll put out a post, or maybe they hire a ghostwriter, but it's not really serious business. This is the job. It's part of your job. Part of your job is to create an environment where people can get inspired and motivated by the stories that you share. And I think great CEOs, they totally lean into that. But I think so many are really afraid. And I actually think in Europe, if I'm candid, I think we're a little behind on what we see in the US. I think CEOs in the US are a little bit more bold in being able to share. But it's coming. It's coming. It's increasing here. But I think the second thing is, realize it's part of the job. Meaning, if you always think it's different, then you'll always put it aside. So that's number two. Number three is, you have to take out of your mind that everything you post has to be perfect. It's never going to be. People will not remember what you posted last week unless it's really brilliant. But if you consistently post and you post good things, you will over time create a feeling around you, a point of view around you that adds up to something. So for me, the JC of B2B, I've worked hard for a long time to create something around me that makes me synonymous with people, with humans, with culture, with leadership, with marketing. Like, these are the topics I talk about, but it's not like me posting every now and then would have made me known for those things. So I work hard at putting something out there that adds value and meaning to people's lives. But it doesn't mean that it has to be perfect. I think the moment you think it has to be perfect, then you'll have that voice inside your head that goes, is this dumb? What will people say? What will my boss think if I post this? Will I get fired? Nobody will care, all those things, because there's so many blockers in people's head because they get nervous about it. But just post, to start posting. Once you get into the habit, it'll get more and more and more comfortable. But the way you post, then, if you want to take the nerves out of it, which is what I do, is I don't sit down really ever, very, very rarely, but I do sometimes, but mostly I never do. I never sit down and just kind of start with the blank page, the LinkedIn box, and start writing. I have like a notebook and I write down my thoughts, and it's based on my experiences or observations or things that have gone well or things that haven't gone well. And I write down these thoughts and then I work on them over time. So for example, right now I have probably 30 or 40 posts that are unpublished that I'm still kind of working on, that I haven't really figured out the exact way to get the point across in the most elegant, fun way. Again, I'm not trying to be perfect, but I'm trying to at least leave people with like, there's a point to this here. I don't want to just, again, like I said earlier when we talked about different marketing ways, I don't want to just put out nonsense either, right? So I'm trying to put out something that's at least a little thoughtful. And so I have a lot of thoughts that are just kind of sitting there, but I usually then schedule my posts ahead of time. Like I've already scheduled my post for the next week. And they're all like lined up to come out. And some of them are probably better than others, and that's okay, right? So that's the second thing. It's
Right.
That's the next thing is like don't stress about trying to be perfect. Take the time to like write something out. But if you start writing out, I bet if you sat down, Mike, and you gave yourself permission to write 10 ideas in 10 minutes, you can come up with 10 storylines. Not flush them out. That takes much longer, but say, okay, number one, I'm gonna write a story from my first job. That's a storyline right there. That's one prompt. Number two, I'm going to write about the first time I got promoted. Okay, that's another storyline, right? Number three, I'm going to write about first time I got told off by my boss, you know, blah. So you can easily come up with prompts. I just gave you three in like 30 seconds, right? So they're not hard to do. And then you can start like working from there. But don't think that you have to perfect them over like instantly, but you can do that over time. And then I think it's about, okay, really honing in on your voice. But that just takes practice. People always expect to write something that's brilliant. It took me a long time to find my voice and figure out like I want to be authentic, a little bit self-deprecating for me because I'm like, I'm not perfect, you know, and I try to have a little bit of humor about my faults, but also my successes because I don't want to come across as late, yay, look at me, but trying to find that fine balance. And then for the final thing is I try to find the topics that I know that I have some domain expertise in, or at least some passion in. You can always tell when I've written stuff that is kind of like not that great because it's like I'm not that passionate about it. Maybe it's something. So I usually write about leadership, culture, marketing, branding, sales, stuff like that. Stuff where I would classify as deep expertise in and a point of view that adds a little bit to the color or knowledge that somebody might have when they read that. But it takes time to do so. I mean, I've kind of committed mostly to myself that I put out something most days, not all the time, but most days. But it's working. I mean, Rasmus, he was speaking. Our CEO was speaking to an investor recently, and the investor said to Rasmus, "I think I see you guys in your company more than I see my family because we show up now." And he mentioned me by name. See, I think this guy Robin, I see him all the time. Like, yeah, because we actually putting out content. You know, we're very proud of it. So it's definitely working. And when we put out job offer or job specs, you know, that we're hiring for, we get more inbound than we ever have before. So but it takes time, and it requires, coming back to the storytelling we talked about earlier, requires courage. It requires a point of view. It requires a little bit of patience because, again, just like I said, that channel takes. You're not going to measure success in days or weeks. You're going to measure it in probably months, quarters, maybe even years. And the same goes for personal branding. You're not going to go out and post something and then in a month you're going to be like, great, look at how good I am. And look at like how many followers I have. Unless you're super lucky and you hit the jackpot, it just takes a little time to do so. But I mean, I would love to just like throw it back at you. Like, how do you see it? What do you do? What's your system for doing this? Because you also post a lot of great content.
That's a great point, and I would also follow up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, at this stage, to be honest with the audience, I'm kind of in the process of delegating a bit of the mechanics and making it better with videos and design and so on. But yeah, the majority of the times it's me with a photo that I have on my iPhone just coming. I have a slot on my calendar, and every single day religiously I think about the stories of the day, and I just post about one of those stories with clients that I faced without sharing anything that is confidential, of course. But yeah, that's how it works. I'm trying to be a little bit more distributed as you, kind of planning a little bit ahead, but I go a lot with the emotion of the day. And yes, I also have been through kind of finding my voice.
It's also the difference if you write content that's real time based on what's happening in the world and news, or if you write more evergreen content. I rarely write content that's commentary on current events. Honestly, if you look at it, it's mostly evergreen content that you could look at a year from now and still relate to, like leadership, culture, like a lot of these foundational things. Because if you want a hot take on something, you can probably find better people than me on stuff like that, right? That's what's happening with NVIDIA or AI or Microsoft's latest build conference. I'm like, okay, I can certainly give you an opinion, but there's probably better people. But if it's like these like hardcore topics that I know everyone grapples with, then I'll probably spend a little bit more time putting some thought into it.
What I took from your words as well, Robin, is that this kind of movement across the entire company doesn't happen by law. So you need to inspire the organization. You need to lead by example, and then people will start doing the same because they are excited. They see the power, they see the impact, they see the purpose, they see the vision. So it's no guidelines that you will just sit down, guys, you are part of the company. Now you need to post at least 3 times a week.
No,
And
it
those
never
are the
works.
topics
It
that you
never
need to
works.
post about.
It never works. It never works. The final thing I'll tell you, just maybe some good guideline is I have this kind of mental rule of thumb that I say 90% of my content or so is really personal experiences, personal observations, like I just talked about. 9% of my content is around the team and people I want to give a shout out to and try to highlight inspiring people in my life. And then kind of 1% of my content is really more company focused. I don't think people come to social media to be sold to. I mean, it happens indirectly, obviously, I think in many ways, but I rarely try to just go like, hey, look at our new features or our new campaign. So I do it sometimes, but I mean, it's when I'm really like proud of the work that we've done. But I also try to limit it because I think that just kind of turns off your audience in some way. So I would highlight, because I see a lot of CEOs when they're dabbling with some of this stuff, they're only posting company content, and you're like, I know what you're trying to do, but it's not really working, you know?
It's much more the point of view. I really enjoy that expression. So we are almost getting to the final segment. So let's just try to put all together what we have discussed today in this episode. So how do we bridge this all? So how do we cut through the noise in terms of the go-to-market motion? How are we able to build what is always the dream, right? A repeatable, profitable, and scalable go-to-market machine. Why category creation is important, why personal branding is important, and what are the different options that we have. I'm not kind of asking you to explain everything that, that you share again, but kind of a quick summary of what you think are the main takeaways of our episode today.
Well, it starts with knowing what you want to achieve. If you want to just create a company and sell it after a few years, you can do that. But I think if you want to create a company that stands the test of time, that becomes legendary or epic, then you should probably think about what category you want to ultimately be a part of or own, right? And so the reason you want to like move up to that level is because if you become the default in a category, then everybody else, as we talked about, have to prove themselves against you. But I always think of it, you can compete at the feature, product, category, or movement level. The more you move up, the revenue potential is way higher and the loyalty the customers have. Like once you're the category leader and you're like owning a category in some ways or dominating one, people are not just going to switch you out. If you're stuck at the feature level, guess what happens the moment a better feature comes along with somebody else, you'll switch, right? Because you have no loyalty to that company. So doesn't mean you can't build a successful company and like have an exit or something. But so ultimately, I think this is why the way that then you move up to the category leader or the movement even, we're talking years or even decades to get there, depending on what industry you're in. And it requires a lot of like really deep, consistent thought on the brand you want to create. Like, so if you're only going for winning at the feature level because you've got the best whatever it is, then you can probably just spam the world with as many digital ads because you can convert people really quickly. But if you ultimately want to create a feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself, you want to move up to the category and the movement level. And that requires your customers to fall in love with who you are, what you do. And that happens oftentimes through the people. That's why the personal branding aspect is so important. Stand for something because that's what ultimately people want to be associated with. And that can morph over time. It doesn't have to be the same forever, but it also doesn't at the same time change every quarter, every year, depending on what mood you're in and what the leadership looks like. It's like usually the greatest companies, I think about Patagonia or Nike, Airbnb, they've been fairly consistent with their values for a very long time
Right.
because they might, of course, change at the edges, but they're fairly consistent. And I think that's how you create a great company. But it requires consistency and focus and dedication because, again, it doesn't happen quickly. This is something that takes time to build.
So let's go to the Jay-Z exercise to wrap up the show. You need to, for the ones who have not seen it, you need to go look for Robin and Benjamin kind of trying to select what were the quotes said by Robin or by Jay-Z. So we are kind of giving you kind of 15 seconds. So we close this part of the show in 3 minutes. So if you'd have the opportunity to have a coffee with Robin when you move it to San Francisco, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
It's very simple. Worry much less about what you think people think about you. I spent so much of my time stressing about what people thought about me because I didn't have an MBA or I hadn't worked at McKinsey or Bain or Google or whatever, So I always felt like an imposter. Like, you know what? Everyone feels that way. I would just have gotten over it much quicker.
What are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
I'm really proud of the people that I have had in my orbit who I've been able to lift and get to the next level. Like so many people who have either worked with me or for me have now gone on to become incredible leaders of their own. And nothing makes me happier by far, by far.
Worst advice ever received?
Be more of an asshole. I had a leader who told me that was too nice, and I'm like, if that's the kind of company that you want to create where people are assholes, and that's not really the kind of company I want to be a part of. It's not the world I want to live in.
Favorite book?
My favorite book that's probably had the most profound impact on me is a book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I read that when I was a pretty young guy, and it's really about a guy who, even though he has all the opportunities in the world, he decides to follow his own heart and do what's right for him. And I just always inspired me. Like I've been around some great mentors and teachers, but at the end of the day, it's about following my heart and what my heart is saying to do.
Love that book. Favorite movie or series?
I would say that my favorite series is probably Game of Thrones. I think it's epic in every way. Favorite movie, because this always sounds depressing when I say it, but it's probably Schindler's List, honestly. It's a very hard movie to watch, but there's a lot of hope in there as well. And the ability to fight for humanity and do what's right in the face of danger and destruction and malice. Wow, that's an inspiring movie.
And finally, your favorite podcast, excluding this one.
The one I'm enjoying listening to the most right now is definitely the Pivot podcast. I just love the banter of Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. I mean, like they have their own podcasts, which are good as well, but there's something about the banter between the two of them I think is super fun because they both get along in a lot of things, but they also argue. And I love being challenged in my viewpoints because it's how I grow and learn and become different. And I love that they can do that so publicly for everybody else.
Robin, thanks so much for making the time today. You are always welcome to come back to share your journey and to talk about other topics. I really appreciate your time and looking forward to release this with our community.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to see you.
And to our community, thanks for being there. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier as you scale up your company. See you soon and keep scaling.